Alright, how you guys doing today? Today's story, my bad, today's question is coming from r/AskReddit. First things first though, if you like the art, like the video, if you like my voice, like the video, and make sure you leave a comment. Don't care what you say, just say something. This question is coming from user/soundsmushy, titled, what's the wildest thing you've ever seen going on at a party you were at? A girl giving away free blowjobs. There was a line and all. And then a comment to that, did you get one? Asking the real questions. Taps pockets, taps keys, phone, chapstick lighter. Oh crap, forgot my free blow. My cousin stabbed my other cousin. Then my other cousin came in seeing it and then stabbed them both. Luckily they all survived. I once saw a man vomit up an entire intact Dorito. I walked into a room where two girls fully clothed were beating the crap out of this naked guy's nuts with seemingly whatever they could find. He apparently begged them to do it, and I didn't stay around long enough to ask any questions. A guy named Dusty, who had a raccoon on his shoulder snorting coke off of an iPad. It was crazy. All at the same party. 3 large girls in a tub together, someone crashing through the glass coffee table, a fire on top of the stove that someone tries to put out by firing a gun into a water heater next to the stove. The guy whose apartment it was eventually got sober and became wildly successful in town for a few years, then shot himself unexpectedly. At a high school party, a guy was effing this chick behind a couch. Everyone was watching and chanting, "Come, come, come," and then it progressively got louder until he finished. It was a weird night. I saw a guy get his lip bit off by a pit bull. Not the crazy part. The piece of his face was laying on the couch as everyone was freaking out. I say, put it on ice and take it to the hospital. They might be able to reattach it. This guy picks it up and says, I'm a hunter, they can't reattach it. I say, you aren't a doctor. Whether they can or not, at least they can look at it and then they can decide. He says no when the victim gets rushed off to the hospital. The crazy MFer then proceeds to play with the piece of flesh for the next 2 hours, balling it up and stretching it, smelling it and crap. The whole time I keep saying junk like, what's wrong with you? And you could have at least given to the doctors for a chance to fix his face. He keeps repeating, I'm a hunter. I know what I'm talking about. A year later, the hunter committed suicide by jumping in front of a train. And then a comment, incidentally, if you ever want to have something reattached, you have to put it in a separate bag and then put that bag in ice. If it's directly touching the ice/water, the chances of reattachment are much lower, if not non-existent. 2 married men with kids were caught 69ing in the garage. I think it was 2003 or 2004, but we had a high school Halloween party and some kids from our school dug up 2 dead bodies from the local cemetery and dressed them up as Darth Vader, and everyone was just chilling out with the bodies, doing drugs and drinking, and a couple of kids got arrested for desecrating a body. A buddy's cousin's parents were out of town for the weekend back in high school. The cousin was carrying a pistol on his hip the entire party with 50 people there, and nothing goes down. It's about 4 a.m. and we're drunker than sailors, and it's only about a handful of us left. Another friend of mine finds a rifle in the closet and then proceeds to laugh and point it at cousin. Cousin then proceeds to return the favor. I'm sitting right next to him on the couch and all of a sudden, his gun goes off. Everyone goes quiet. We all stare at each other shocked. Then blood starts to flow. Cousin laughs and goes, oh fuck, and then passes out. He shot himself through the calf 2 weeks before he was supposed to go to Marine boot camp. Twice in my life, both times on 1980s New Zealand, I've been to a house demolition party. Once on a relative's farm and once through work. I'm a carpenter. Sort of a bring your own beers and sledgehammer type of thing. It sounds like a fun raucous night, but both times there were a lot of drunken injuries. The first one featured someone driving a tractor into the house and the roof caved in on a bunch of people. The second one ended up with a giant punch-up because someone crushed someone else's chainsaw. Ultimately, both nights ended up with a bunch of pissed, injured people watching a house burn down. What we did used to do on a more regular basis, however, was have a weekend party at my mate's dad's farm. We would buy an old car that ran from the classified ads in the paper during the week, pick up a couple kegs, a hog to roast and sleeping bags, and head over to the back blocks of this farm. Then we'd spend the weekend around with the sacrificial car, doing time trials around a pre-dedicated route, trying to jump it, trying to roll it, seeing if the trees could be pulled and pushed down with it. When the pork was eaten and the beers were finished on the Sunday, we would just blow the car up. This is what me and the guys I grew up with did for fun in the 1980s rural New Zealand. It all feels so foreign now. After reading the dude's stabbing story, mine doesn't seem weird. Anyways, a guy busted the door off its hinges with his head. You're gonna have to be more specific. He sucked the doorknob so well that the door busted off its hinges. I was relatively new to the army at the time, was away with work during a course, and got invited back to the live-in lines of some combat engineers to keep drinking one night. We went to their common room, a larger room to socialize, where there were a few other people, both guys and girls, drinking and listening to music. I was looking around to see if I recognized any familiar faces, and I noticed a commotion on one of the couches. I could hear a female's voice, but all I could see was one dude standing, no pants on, back towards me, holding on to some round hips and just thrusting hard. And then I noticed there were a pair of feet close together, between his, on the floor, facing me, almost covered by a pair of pants, that were obviously around the person's ankles. I stared for a minute trying to understand the human Tetris that had occurred, and then I figured it out. Some chick was straddling a guy on the couch, riding him, and the original guy I first noticed was just DPing her, going hell for leather. No one else in the room really noticed or cared. They all just stood around and sat drinking and talking crap like nothing was going on. And I was dumbfounded. I'm guessing they must have finished, because the girl getting railed eventually stood up and the dude she was riding pulled his pants up and walked off. But then she got back on her hands and knees, and not only let other dudes keep going, but a completely different guy yelled, "Tag out!" Walked over, dropped his pants, and put his D in her mouth. One of the other females in the common room started laughing and chanting, "Yeah, suck it!" And that, my friends, was my first introduction to the live-in life on an army base back in the early 2000s. At a festival, at 6 a.m. or so on the last day, I walked past a guy who was naked, except for tighty whities, which he had clearly took a crap in, and he had a kazoo in his mouth, playing it on every breath as he walked by. Not exactly party or even very wild, but I went to a dance in a smaller town, not far from the small town I lived in. I was vibing to the music when this cute little blonde asked me up for a dance. I say sure, and we dance. After it's over, I turn and walk off the floor, and this big mountain of meat is standing in my way. Cue overloud rock, and he says something. I can't hear him, so I say, "What?" He says it again, and I still can't hear him. So I think, what can this guy want? Oh, I get it. He wants to smoke. So I pull the pack out, pull one out, and hand it to him. Whip out the lighter and light it up for him. He shrugs and walks away, so I go on. My buddy, who was standing nearby and not deafened by the music, not standing right in front of the speaker like I was, looked at me with a grin and said, "Wow, that was cool." And I say, "What was cool?" He said, "The way you just dusted that guy off when he said he was going to break your face for dancing with his girlfriend." I stopped and looked at my bud and said, "Really? I thought he just wanted to smoke." And then I comment to that. So if you look up psychological games that people play, this is a very well documented one. It's called Let's You and Him Fight. Girl and guy go to a party or bar. Girl hits on, grinds on, whatever with some guy. Boyfriend comes up and says, "Why are you doing that with my girlfriend?" She gets to flirt and mess around, and he gets to kick some guy's poor ass. And then they get to go home and F about how strong and masculine he is. It's a setup, and they get their rocks off that way. In high school, I was tripping on acid at a party in a nice home. Affluent neighborhood, and the parents were out of town. I hear a commotion happening at the front door and see a classmate coming in, bloody and kinda laughing. His arm is strangely angled. Everybody, but me, thinks that this is epic and hilarious. He told everyone that he crashed his car somewhere out there, and a friend and I go out and search for his car and find it following the red and blue flashing lights in the distance. The car was wrapped around a tree. The kid was lucky to be alive. The cop asks if we know anything about the driver, and me, tripping my balls off and totally in a coerced Boy Scout first aid mind, I'm thinking, this kid is in shock back at the party, and maybe he's seriously wounded. So I tell the cop, "Yeah, we know the guy, and we'll take you to him." He says get in the car, and I get into the back. Into a freaking cage. My friend is in the front seat, and my mind is spinning in that cage like, what did I do? We directed him back to the party, where we pull up in front of our classmates out front. They see us get out of the cop car, and the injured kid is found. And it turns out he's seriously injured. Broken arm and other broken bones, and he's bleeding from gashes, and then he's whisked off to the hospital. I lecture everyone on the often fatal results of shock, and they're all like, "Are you for real?" And the injured guy to this day thinks I'm a dick. Someone getting stabbed with a pitchfork at a barn party, too drunk to remember how it ended up for him. After getting a gun to my head for flirting with a guy's girlfriend, I woke up in the middle of the road with two people throwing me in a ditch for my own safety. It was some night. And then somebody said, "Was this all the same party?" And then he comments, "Yeah, someplace in the Netherlands, way back in the early 90s. Not all that crazy, but it's a fun story. Had a house party with a mixed group of friends, my friends and my roommate's friends. Most of us all knew each other well enough, but there were some stragglers, and it was going pretty chill until one of my roommate's friends started drinking from the bottle of liquor that one of my friends brought. Now keep in mind, nobody had a problem with this guy drinking our booze. Everybody brought stuff to pass around, so everybody was drinking everything. However, my drunk friend from Eastern Europe randomly decided that he had a problem with it and confronted the guy. My Eastern European friend is also built like a tank, 6 foot tall and 250 pounds of unadulterated pure muscle. So things start to escalate and we all start to get in between the two guys, a temper starting to flare. There's like 5 of us holding back the big guy, telling him that it's fine and he needs to calm down. The two dudes are screaming at each other when finally the smaller guy says something like, "Relax, dude, this is America." I just remember the European dude's eyes getting wide before he screams, "This is fucking what?" as he proceeded to jump over 5 of us and Superman punched this kid right in his jaw. The party ended at that point because we had to take the smaller guy to the hospital with a broken face. 15 years later, that quote is still a meme among my friend group. So in college, my girlfriend was trying to make friends with her coworkers at an ice cream shop and got invited to their weekly party at a house that 2 of them rented. I never met either of them before, but they seemed normal and maybe even a little bit shy. Anyways, about an hour into the party, one of the guys just whips out this gallon Ziploc bag, half full of every colored pill imaginable, seemingly from underneath the sofa cushion, and then he silently ran into his room and locked the door. Nobody saw him for about a half hour, when suddenly he bursts out, shirtless and grooving to a song that only he could hear. He walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, took out a yellow bottle of mustard, stuck the nozzle up his nose, and just huffed the mustard. Like, squeezed the junk out of the new looking bottle while loudly sucking through his nose like a vacuum cleaner. Then he threw the substantial mustard bottle through a glass window in a moment of pure raging adrenaline, only moments later to lay down on his living room carpet, flowing into this kind of infinitely relaxed human puddle with mustard smeared all over one side of his face. He then abruptly whipped his pants and boxers off to start furiously jacking it in front of about 20 people. The craziest part was that my girlfriend and I seemed to be the only ones shocked and concerned for him. We both asked if we needed to dial 911 or walk him down to the hospital nearby, but everyone was just completely dismissive about it. I wanted to make sure he was okay, but also kind of scared to get too close to this almost violently masturbating weirdo flowing across the living room carpet. We kind of just snuck out the front door and never got invited to another party. It must have just been a week before that guy could smell anything but mustard again. Like, jacking it was shocking, but still kind of understandable, as it's probably the thing an overly intoxicated person might be inclined to do. But I'll never forget that sight of him huffing the mustard. Who does that? What drug would make that enjoyable? Not wild per se, but one of the more hilarious moments in my first year of uni. We were all drunk in someone's house when the front door slams open, and one of my mates, who happens to live at the actual house as well, runs in dressed as a chicken. Think Family Guy, with an actual chicken under his arm like a rugby ball. He's shouting, "Get out of the way, watch out," as he bungles past me and the other kids in the hall and the kitchen before exiting through the back door into the garden area. He jumps the wall and into the lane, and no more than 10 seconds later, an irate, presumably former chicken owner, runs into the house and shouts, "Where's the chicken?" Now most of us are laughing or in shock and we just point to the kitchen door. The guy goes out the back and I never saw him again. I wish we all had phones with cameras so I could prove once and all to my friends that this actually happened, since he can't remember it. Someone ate an entire Costco box of frozen Eggos. The house owner had us Venmo them $3 to leave the place. At a party years ago, a bunch of friends all got naked and went to this nearby graveyard to play hide and seek. One friend, seeking, pulled another friend, hiding, backwards out of a tree by his nuts. Was once at a party having a smoke on a balcony, and a goth came out who had a lot of hairspray to keep the back comb look going strong. She goes to light up her cig and her hair went up, for a few seconds too. Luckily she was fine and it just burnt the excess hairspray off her hair, but drunk me thought it was gonna be a goner. And the last one, not at a party, but I was getting a burger around 1 or 2 a.m. after a guy came down to the campus burger joint, fully nude, and waited in line, ordered, and got his burger. There was a campus police office about 20 feet away from this restaurant, and either they were out or they just did not give a crap, and the dude just sat down and had his burger. Pictures were all over an anonymous social media app that was popular at the time. Alright, and I hope you guys have yourselves a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.